Welcome
Got
back to
it.
the archive, James. This is an
Thank
exciting
you.
day because by chance, this is the morning. Your most viewed blog out of the past 3 years has just dropped. So fill me in. What's going on?
Well, let's see, the last 2 weeks I've been doing book shows. 3 weeks I was in Toronto, Boston, and I just got home. And one of the things I noticed is that there was a couple of books that just interested strangers were interested in, professors were interested in, curators of collections were interested in, and students. And they kept asking the same kind of questions over and over again. And I enjoyed it. And I learned a lot and dug into it and shared my history as an archaeologist with them and really dug into what the material object of the book means. And it's something now that's people are making noises about it becoming obsolete, which is the furthest from the truth I can imagine. Everybody who enjoys reading and enjoys thinking is going to have a book around and a book with them, even though you can, you know, get all this stuff on your phone or whatever. The book really maintains like a cultural connection, and I think that that's what makes it so popular. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
touchable history too. I mean, you've
yeah,
got books that are hundreds of years old, like some of the first books ever printed.
right, and you can like go to most libraries in North America and at least find books about the first books that were made. And one of the things that happened at the book show is I had a sale to a 13-year-old boy, which for me was amazing. He and his grandmother came to the book show, and he was walking around trying to find something medieval that he could afford. And he was very shy, just a wonderful kid. And his grandmother said, "This is my grandson, and he wants to buy something medieval, and he's looked at your books. And I don't know if you noticed them or not." And I hadn't. And he wants to know if there's anything he can afford. And I said, "Oh, well, that depends on, what you can afford. What's the sort of price range that you need to be in?" And he looked at his grandmother and he looked at me and said, "A couple $100?" And his grandmother said, "Yeah, that's fine." And he proceeded to take out a bunch of gift cards from like Cabela's and Target and stuff like that. And then he said, "So what can I afford?" So I made like a little pile of things for him. And mostly they were medieval leaves. But he was just totally thrilled. And I came down on my price a little bit, and he like had to walk away and come back in a little while and said, "I talked to my grandmother and she said I can get two things at that price." So I lowered my price again and gave him three. And one of the things, and I'll grab it right now, a leaf from a medieval book of hours. Isn't that beautiful?
That's
Let
incredible.
me take it out of the sleeve there. Can you see that? Is that good? There we go. So this is a Bible scene, the annunciation of um, Gabriel to the Virgin Mary, saying, "You're going to have a God. You're going to give birth." And it was a page like this. This is all hand painted. It's from around 1500, maybe 1480s, somewhere in there.
Okay, could
And
you raise a little bit so we can look at the text? What's this written in, the language?
it is French and Latin. I think the section right there is French. Really wonderful typeface. I think the person that printed this was his name was Hardouin, and it's just incredibly vivid colors. It's on vellum, which is animal skin, and very, very, strong. Believe it. Hear
Yeah.
that wild that you do that with something that's over 500 years old for sure. And it depicts a biblical scene.
Yeah. Okay, so I got a
And
couple questions that are coming to mind.
sure.
So Gabe has blue wings. There's a guy up in the upper left corner who looks
Right,
like
looking in the
he's,
window.
yep.
Yeah, yeah,
And then Mother Mary's got
the red.
a dove
Or
above her head.
yes, yeah, that's her. Yes, so she's in the blue. And yeah, so this is probably uh somebody like John or somebody retelling the story. This is his point of view, and we get to peek in the window and see this happen.
Oh.
So it creates a narrative. Isn't that fabulous?
Yeah, I'd never known that they would have actually depicted that in their art. Now, there's a lot of paintings I've seen at the Boston Museum of Fine Art and the time I was in London that now make sense.
Hmm. Yeah, so they're always trying to draw you into the image. On this side, let's see, can you see that pretty clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so these people right here are viewers, and we're like stepping into their shoes. So the narrative art is like just so strong in these things, and you can look at the picture and you can almost like say, I've got to begin here and work my way down this way. um so there's a lot of stuff to get your head out of a modern um a modern experience of art, or um or a medieval mindset, away from the modern, like everything all the time, like right at you, and everywhere you look is something important. It's a more ordered, regimented, mediated and learning process. Just like a book, you read um, left to right, top to bottom, and you go down this corner. And even the notion of beginning is so um, not postmodern. Now we just are there. And so when I was talking to all these people about the material aspects of the book, they would say to me, so, what's that? Or so this book is the book I've written the least about in my blog. And it's also the cheapest one, and probably the most interesting and the most thing to be discovered. It has a newer binding on it, newer than the book. The book is from 1518, so still 500 years old. And it was a school book, and it was made probably with the cheapest cover you could possibly get. And then it was probably falling apart, and they put this paste paper over it, which is just decorative wallpaper. I mean, it looks like wallpaper to us. And it was sort of just, it's paper, it's strong, but at the same time, it's not fancy or expensive. And then you open the book up and you can see the notes everywhere. These are people's names, people's ideas about the book. And again, I haven't really read it. Unlike the other ones that I have read, I, just like everybody else in modern times, run out of time to do as much scholarship as I want. And I also specifically did it to this book because I want a person or a university or a student or somebody who needs a PhD topic to be able to buy this book and discover what it's all about. So here is the title of the book. Mark Fabry Quintilian was a first century rhetorician, or basically he wrote about how to read and write, and mostly write and speak like an educated person. And the name of the book is The Institutions of Oration. So how to speak. And then it has an index, and then this printer's device, but no printer, no date, nothing, which is like suspect, because just like today, when you need a textbook, you need the textbook. So if you can read it online and not have to pay the $50 at the bookstore to get it, you'll do it. This was like that. This was a cheap, down and dirty forgery of the real book. It came out a few years before this, I think 15, 14.
Okay.
It's such a perfect forgery that Aldus, ALDUS, was a printer of the real one. And so they just basically, this is like their version of a Xerox of the real book.
Okay, so this is basically pirating. We're looking at a
Yeah.
pirate book.
Exactly. Yeah, like you and I probably used to do on cassette tapes or CDs. Get
Yeah.
one from your friend and then copy it. And
Or
this was
torrent
like
files.
yeah. Yeah. And here you have an owner's name, which is open for interpretation, how that even gets spelled. It's you can see the letters. It looks like JOANNE up there at the top. You see right up there. I can
Joanne, and then it starts with an F.
Yeah. So it will take some time to even figure out what that is.
Joanne Fearg?
It looks like a Y or an N, maybe a G, maybe a Z. IA. It could be
I might be able. Maybe if I had the book in front of me, I might be able to read
yeah.
it.
So it could be a BIAGNZ. This would be my first guess. And then down here's more ownership stuff, probably about where or when they began the book. And then there's a little bit more notes. Here's a section in chapter 1 that they're specifically interested in. And then get the index, more notes in general. This is the prologue. And here's the text. And this is why I haven't read it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
See, there's
Incredible.
notes in between every line. And you have to remember that this was being written with a quill pen, and what constituted artificial light was basically an oil lamp or a candle. So you had to work really hard to write that stuff and to read it afterwards. And what's really fabulous about this is it just goes on and on. So we got a student here trying to like incorporate the lesson into his own way of thinking about everything and keeping notes on it. Now, Quintilian was probably the most popular book on oration and writing of the medieval period and the late Renaissance. And so I've seen a few copies. And one of the things that I always notice is about 3/4 of the way through book 2, no more notes. um, and it's because chapter 3, book 3, still has some notes, but usually in the beginning, because he discusses things like word choice, pronunciation, style. It's the next level. So by this time, you can read and you can talk. So then you move on to something more fun or appropriate, be it medical books or romances or theological books or whatever. But it's like, okay, I've had enough of the textbook. So the rest of the book is pretty clean, which is pretty neat. And that happens all the time. So from that, we get like a snapshot of an intellectual period where this person is going through the same things that we did, like learning phonetics or learning how to read. And then all of a sudden, okay, we got reading covered. Let's not like dwell on it and spend our whole lives doing it, but go to the next thing. And get to the back. And again, there's notes that they're going to want to focus on and remind themselves of. And then here's a real surprise. And this is going to be hard to see because it's tiny. But the board from the book is made up of pages from an older book, all pasted together. So it's like if you didn't have cardboard in your house, if you took like sheets of newspaper and put wheat paste between them and then crushed them, you would get cardboard like this. So this is like a little treasure trove of pre 1518 paper, which is probably a book, and probably I would say there's 30 or 40 pages in here. So the person or institution that buys this can do a little picking and peel this back a little bit and try to figure out what that says. Now, it's 2 books in one now, or maybe 3. So that's the material discovery exhibition that this book will give you. So you get to discover all those incredible things. Isn't that neat?
That is very neat. Definitely gonna start the leaflet. I saw Gabriel with blue wings, and I had never seen a depiction of him like that before. So that's just something to do with
Oh, so yeah. I think I don't know enough about the iconography to do that, except that I think that they did it because blue is a really special color. It's
okay.
expensive and stands out really good.
Okay. All right.
And they had gold, for the border and stuff. And I think if his wings were gold, then he'd have to wear different clothes and all those kind of artistical
Okay.
things.
So artistic symbolism.
Yeah.
All right. That's very, very interesting. You mentioned before, so on the second book, in our French Latin book,
Hmm.
there was so there's a lot of writing and notes. And last time you said there's a lot of notes written in books, so like particularly
Hmm.
Bible. So it's like having 2 in 1.
Right.
Um, so, I'm curious if you saw it, like if you were reading anything or saw anything in those notes.
Um, this one, I didn't really read it through. I just like sort of counted it and stuff. The book, um, the next book I'll show you, I know so much about. This book is from 1497, and it's um, by a Roman satirist named Juvenal, and it's full of notes. And from the notes, um, we can tell. So the introduction in introductory material isn't notated at all. So I think that he probably just skipped over it. Looks like he looked at the index and put a little bit down there. But once you get into the text, he goes all out about it. He interlinear edits. So he's not here's where the text begins. It's right here, and in tiny little script. So there you can see his little notes in there. In the first line of the book, he's already got comments to make. So he is working really hard on this text, and it's a Roman satire, which is just incredibly biting, humorous, and also gives you an ethical view of what the people in the Roman period were like. And on every page, he has like little synopsises of what he thought and who else he's reading mentions this book and what they say about it. So there was a lot of people. This was very common advanced school book. So this person was like a PhD student or pretty close to adult. There's racy subjects in here. There's lots of sexual deviance and things like that.
Okay.
And
So
discussion.
what's the subject of this book primarily? Is this like a cosmology book?
No, it's a satire of Roman culture, written while everyone was a part of Roman culture. So it was contemporary, sort of like discussion of the way people behaved, and and commentary on it.
Okay. This is interesting. So this is like a written debate. Like this guy's providing all of his thoughts on
It's more like reality TV or Big Brother or something like that. Where no, he's really like scandalous. It's like Jersey Shore sort of level of like classical literature. It's great. And so right here, like the first page in, you can see. Let's see, do this. Tell me if you can see that little top bit up there. That goes right into the where the fold is.
Mm-hmm.
See that writing? So there, the writing goes in so far that I think it would be physically impossible for our student to write those notes with a quill pen if the book was in a binding. He probably bought the book in sheets and then took notes on it. And then when he was done notating it, brought it to the bookbinder, had the bookbinder sew it together and make it into a bound book. This book has the original binding. It's a pigskin over wooden boards. So as I was saying, from reading the notes that he leaves, I can basically date that everything he mentions that he's reading, who are contemporary authors with our note taker, and the edition of the book are pre 1511. From his handwriting, like you can see here, it's very Germanic, and I would say he went to school somewhere along the Rhine, maybe Strasbourg or um, someplace around Strasbourg. From his handwriting, this little thing that looks like a moon up there is indicative of a German style of writing. So now we've got the guy located around Strasbourg before 1511, and he's incredibly educated, reading all the cool books as they come out and writing about it in his book here. So this has taken us a lot more than just reading the text. Right now, you can go to buy the Penguin edition of a Juvenal translated and read it and get an idea of what Rome was like according to Juvenal in the first century or so. But this book gives you so much more material depth, and he doesn't stop from quoting his contemporaries. He also goes back to Suetonius, who was making comments about Juvenal's writing as well and comparing those. So he's bridging the gap of time by leaving his notes in there, as opposed to us just reading the very original. So so that's sort of like when I'm reading it, I'm always thinking of like, what's he saying and why is he saying it? Where's it come from? And how does this position him intellectually? So he's on the cusp between humanism and Christianity. This is before Martin Luther, so this is before the Reformation, and it's political, social, religious upheaval, and he's reading about the same thing happening 2,000 years or so before, or 1,800 years before that. So that's really cool, and so it sort of makes this just as valuable to read. The Fall of Democracy is like right in here.
Fall of Democracy, written in a satire of Rome.
Right, when Rome was falling, and how Christianity sort of picked up at that period and goes straight to this period, and right after this is written, Christianity comes under the greatest upheaval it ever has because of the Reformation. So the Catholic Church sort of becomes another ran to the Protestant Reformation. So, and we're going in big, huge, mega tranches of history here in this one little book. So it's really a living thing. It's
Wow.
not just like, I buy all kinds of antiques and antiquities and ancient things, and you have to really, really bring a lot of brain power to them in order to like try to get what's going on in them. Whereas the book, if you just like read it and think about it, it brings you there, as opposed to looking at a vase where you have to bring, like, you have got to read a whole bunch of books to understand the vase. This author makes it through about 6 satires. So this is the 5th. Here's the 6th. And then
So
I
this
think
is 6 different versions of the same satire, or is
no,
it
no,
like
they're
a
just
saga?
different. They're different satires.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were satires really popular at that time in academia?
Um, I think it was like almost like a a more, it wasn't so much academia. Well, so when Juvenal was writing this was like popular culture. When this was published in 1479, it was popular culture under the microscope of academia. It's like people getting their PhD on Marvel Comics now. That they're studying it and trying to figure out how that like leads to the culture that they have and will have in the future. So yeah, it's a huge amount of work here. And as I said, around the sixth one, he sort of peters out and doesn't go on. So I don't know what happened. Maybe he had some other stuff he had to write or read, or maybe he just didn't want to take notes anymore, or had the money to get it bound, and then decided, since it was all bound, I'm not going to like squeeze my pen in there and write all over it.
Okay.
One of the things that's funny at the book show, I had a lot of high school Latin teachers come by, and some of them even brought some of their students. And one of the teacher's spouses said to the teacher, well, you wouldn't want your students writing in their school books. And the Latin teacher said, if they write in Latin like that, they can. That will be fine. And the students like looked at him like, okay, that's great. And sometimes I will find things like not in this one, in a more like relaxed kind of book, like a Cicero or something like that, saying, my professor doesn't know what he's talking about, or my professor is like a jerk, and why do we have to read this section? The people write those kind of things in it too, which is neat. It just makes it all more cohesive.
Okay. That's interesting how people wrote that. But
Mhm.
that would also make sense. Like at that time, paper might have been harder to acquire, it was
Yeah.
scarce. So those big borders
Yeah.
would have given you your note space too.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's very fascinating. That was
Yeah.
also a neat idea. I had never really thought of that before. You could just print out multiple books, write your notes, and then just stitch them all together. It's like having your three punch binder, but
Yeah.
Kindle
Exactly.
style.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's easier to carry around than one of these big things too.
Yeah, yeah, much easier. So, okay. I do want to jump back though, just for a second, on the forged book. Um,
Mhm.
how common during this time period was,
It was
forging a book?
fairly common, to the point that the guy who did the original wrote a broadside, which is just like sort of like a one sheet thing. He printed it up and hung it around towns where there was lots of his forgeries, complaining about it. And his name was Aldus Manutius. And in 1508, I think, he printed up this broadside and hung it in the town that was, I think, made, which was Lyon. And it basically said, I like the idea that everyone likes all of my work, and flattery is like wonderful, but it's messy printing, it's sloppy, it's on bad paper, and there's lots of mistakes in it. So you should really buy my book instead of this. And so it was that common that he like posted like posters around saying, don't buy the forgeries. and I guess to a way it's sort of like the relationship between, I don't know, Advil and uh, generic ibuprofen or something like that. That they really didn't enforce copyright the way um, we do now, or did. Who knows what's going on with copyright these days? But it 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 was more of a local thing. So Aldous was from Venice, and Venice had very strict rules, and people didn't copy him. There was a family in Florence that copied him, and then this one in Lyon that copied him. So and there's not a lot he could do about it except have these like little posters around saying "By the real McCoy."
Yeah.
It's interesting about commerce being the same 500 years ago as well.
I mean, it's fascinating because I like reading, some of the old texts and source materials. And if you can't get them at the store, I mean, there's like a
Right,
PDF for it somewhere.
right, exactly.
Yeah, some kind of scan. But at the same time, it's interesting how exactly what's going on today is going on 500 years ago.
It's the same problems.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It doesn't matter what the technology is. It's just a matter of how do we end up repeating history.
or not like really figuring it out still.
Yeah. And we're discussing a commentary that, or a satire that literally is talking about repetition of history.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So is that all your books, or do you got more?
Yeah, I have one more that's let me see, probably be easier to see too. Here. Okay, so this big one is it's from around 1478. The binding was put on in Ulm in Germany, and the book is by a mystic on the value of good. But the thing that really makes this book stand out among all kinds of other texts is that the binding, this tool, can you see that? It's like a elk.
Yeah.
So that I can identify to a bookbinder in the city of Ulm from around 1470 to 78. So we got the date. These little clasps say Ave Maria on them, almost impossible to read. Took me hours. I was like, those are letters. So I just started copying it and then like blurring my eyes and saying, what possible letter could that be? And they're all sort of squished up. Now, you open the book.
Oh, so was that seal, that symbol, the elk, that was that like a signature from the person who's printing books at the time?
Oh, no, that was just a tool, decorative tool that was used by one guy who had it made in his town.
Okay.
There's all kinds of different decorative tools like that. And it's just like an elk, it's just a cool thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
very cool.
so
Um,
I always think of
so
it when I'm driving through the woods and I see one of those deer crossing signs.
nice. Um, so Ave Maria is also on looks like the locks. Did Ave Maria mean something a little differently back then than it would today?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it meant a lot more. It was just um you see that, you see oro pro nobis, which is like pray for us. It's you know praise Mary, you know um it's just like one of those things, like bless you sort
Yeah.
of. um but at the same time, each one is sort of unique by different printers, different binders, I mean. And So the next thing, I opened this page up and I noticed this was peeking up like this. And I gave it a little pull very gently. And because I could see ghost of writing through here. And sure enough, it's a German prayer, sort of a orational prayer. And from the type, I could identify it. And it's printed by a printer whose name was Gunter Zahner in um, uh, in Augsburg, and he died in 1478. So it's definitely before this. This was from a book, and he didn't get or he didn't print on the other side, which is really rare. This is stuff that would have been thrown away. So, and in fact, he probably gave it to the bookbinder or sold it to the bookbinder, or when he died, the bookbinder just snagged it or inherited it. But so we get to the book, and the book is printed again in around 1478 in Ulm by Gunter's brother, Johann. So we have like brothers sort of competing against each other, but not really, trading places, trading material. And and this is really interesting too. This is an ownership from the Franciscan brothers, Schratzer Minor, in Tyrol. This was from a monastery that was founded in the year 1230 or so, and it burnt down. And then probably by, I'd say the late 14th century, early 15th century, it was one of the strongholds, one a very, very big library. And then in 1515 or so, the Franciscans got tired of, they became, there was a lot of attrition. I think they became tired of having the poverty aspects of their practice and decided not to become Franciscans anymore. And this sort of dates the ownership here of where this book was, in the first 20 years of its life. And you were talking about paper being rare or harder to find. In here, you can see he ran out of paper and had to get cheaper, like smaller paper, just to print to keep the book going, which is really rare. You don't see that very often. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Never seen that before.
You see this, the brown stain? I think that he was probably putting a wet rag on it and putting it in a press and trying to make the paper a little bit bigger. And on this page, you can see the rag marks up there, which are really pretty hard to see even in this one. You can see right there, like looks like a washcloth or something almost.
Yeah.
So that but so those qualities make this book pretty unique. And there's a bunch of other things in here. Let's see. So it's hard to open up, but in here, probably about halfway through, there's a handprint. It's this hand of the book printer. Got his hand dirty and put his hand right there, which is sort of rare. And yeah, this is another ownership that shows that it left the monastery probably by around 1560. So those are the cool things about the book, and these are the things that came from the book show that I found most popular. So yesterday I decided Tuesday's my big blog day, that I would sit down and rewrite all my descriptions and try to make it as cogent as possible and get those done.
Yeah.
So you got like a book show in an hour.
Yeah. Very good book show within an hour. All right. Thank you, James.
Sure.